Hi guys, Phaze here with what I believe is one of the strongest all-around builds in 3.22, Lightning SRS. While SRS has the minion tag, this build does not feel like a minion build at all. It feels much more similar to a damage over time build, and you actually get rewarded for playing well. Think of SRS minions as mobile heat-seeking dots. On a low budget for this build, you're looking at around maybe 10 million DPS. Endgame, you can get up to around 40-45 million. As far as survivability goes, it's a champion. That's all I have to say, right? Perma-fortified, cheat death, tons of free armor evasion, tons of aura effect. Become a champion. For mapping, it's not DD, it's not cold dot, it's not bone shatter tier, but it's a very solid mapper, deletes essences and bosses. The playstyle sort of feels like a dot build while mapping. Just cast once or twice and you keep moving. This build is an incredible bosser. It's tanky, it's mobile, has high sustained dot-like damage, amazing uptime. It pretty much checks all the boxes except maybe recovery. But let's be real, who needs recovery when you have 3 life flasks? As far as mobility goes, you have haste, vol haste with massive aura effect from champion. You get attack speed from champion. More than 100% movement speed while mapping. Shield charge is very snappy. Mobility will not be an issue here. It's pretty comfy. Alright, so let's get into it a bit. It's hard to talk about SRS without mentioning the Sanctum Gauntlet from earlier this year. Poison SRS dominated the event, and nothing else really came close. I killed 6 of 7 Ubers for 3rd place overall with Poison SRS, and was surprised at how mechanically and numerically sound it was. So, if Poison has been so dominant recently, why Lightning now? While SRS, Lightning, Fire, and Cold have all been done before with great success by other HC players, there are a few big changes in 3.22 that elevate Lightning above the rest. In the past, this build was locked into running damage on full life support, which is a very underwhelming conditional support. This patch, it's replaced by Volatility, which is 50% more damage unconditionally. Absolutely enormous. March of the Legion gives us 40 to 55% more damage, which is an unreal amount of damage for one item slot. Damage is front loaded, it has no ramp up time, which is huge during maps in Sanctum. We can automate Flesh Offering, Poison cannot. Poison was hit with a Temporal Chains nerf, and the no ramp up time makes this build incredible for Sanctum, which is now core.
Barakath, slay them! Bow to my sycophants!
So I started doing Sanctum around level 94 and I didn't stop until level 100. There was basically zero risk of death, especially once the Lore Weave and the Eternal Damnation went on. It's an incredibly safe way to hit 100 HC. I got around 8 Eternal Damnations, 3 Temp Chains cooldown Balance of Terrors. I only failed 1 Sanctum the entire stretch, and that was early on when relics were pretty weak. Currency wise, I made about 2 mirrors in HC trade. I made somewhere around 50 divines purely from dumping relics into cell tabs. I don't know how long that will remain profitable though. As far as the build, it feels really good in Sanctum since SRS does all the thinking, the targeting, all the heavy lifting, stuff just kind of melts.
You will know pain! I will save this world!
For a single target, aim to hit the boss with a smite every few seconds so that lightning exposure stays up, and so that the smite aura stays active for your minions. Divine Blessing Wrath should always be active. It lasts for around 16 or 22 seconds, depending on your reservation mastery. Your Wrath aura will cover the entire screen, essentially in endgame gear. For burst damage, you pop Vol Haste and then Vol Smite directly after to mitigate some of Vol Smite's long attack time. Doing this is also quite useful inside Sanctum. Boss damage is fairly good. It's definitely enough that it trivializes many Ubers once you're geared. With Lore Weave and Eternal Damnation, a match made in heaven, you don't have to worry about doing any gear or purity swaps when you boss. You can just jump from Uber to Uber with no worries. On top of being near immortal to elemental damage. Alright, so here we have required items. I would not recommend playing the build without these. We want a diadem with either Dex Int or Res Chaos. and this enables Divine Blessing from the boots and solves mana cost. From a medium cluster, we want Blessed Rebirth, Minion Life Cluster. This is mandatory as well. Do not play without this. Your minions will die. You'll hate your experience. It's just not a good time. For March of the Legion, you want a +5 roll here. And these are massive damage and saves us a gem slot with Divine Blessing. And yeah, that's all you need. Alright, so as far as the skill tree goes, there's nothing too out of the ordinary here. Just slightly different pathing down here to grab more suppression. As far as tattoos, you want to try to fit as many of these as you can into the build. Tattoo of the Flock, increased effect of non-curse auras from your skills. Be warned, these are not cheap. You want to get one of these, +1 level of all int gems. Pretty good. You want to make sure you have Avatar of Fire. So our Smite does not do lightning damage, and break our EE from Stabilizing Scepter. Other than that, pretty standard. Alright, so we have endgame skill gems. We have SRS here, nothing out of the ordinary except the new support Volatility. Make sure you have this. This is 50% more damage. It's on par with Awakened Multi-Strike and Awakened Minion damage. Very big. For auras, Determine and Vol Haste are always in. I would almost always recommend just running Skitterbots and Unbound Ailments. If you want to, for mapping, you can use Grace and a level 1 Enlighten, which will hit level 2 with Diadem. If you want to be a bit safer, it's fine too. In our March of the Legion boots, we have Vol Smite, Wrath, huge auras, along with Generosity to boost them even more, and Power to boost them even further. We have a level 36 Vol Smite here and a level 38 Wrath. Gloves, just typical movement speed stuff, and a curse. In our trigger weapon, we have Desecrate and Flesh Offering. These will both be triggered automatically just by playing the game. We have Defiance Banner. In our shield, we have Cast when damage taken Molten Shell. I don't use Vol Molten Shell personally. You can if you want. But I find that Vol Haste and Vol Smite is already pretty heavy on Vol Soul usage, so it's personal preference. And then LA Weakness. That's it. Alright, let's quickly go over gear. We have a Stabilizing Scepter, and there's a crafting guide for this in the notes and in the video. We have the Minion Shield, and these are usually crafted with Life, like Greed Essence spam, T1 or T2. And hoping for minion damage. Having a Fracture here can make it way easier to get a good shield. We want to Diadem, either Dex Int or Res Chaos. I think Dex Int is a bit better right now because of tattoos, unless you go Supreme Ostentation. Lore Weave pairs very well with Eternal Damnation. In HC, I would highly recommend these. In SC, you probably don't need them. We have Minion Damage Gloves. These can be crafted with Suppression Fracture. If you don't have Suppression Fracture, don't worry about the minion damage. We have March of the Legion. There's a section on this in the notes, but 1 corruption should be attainable. And make sure it's a +5 Eternal Damnation. You want to anoint Whispers of Doom for a 2nd curse. Try to get a high Chaos Res roll, but don't break the bank. You either use Amethyst or Vermilion, depending on your Chaos Res. And you Catalyst these. And then harvest Reforged Chaos until you get a decent one, decent suffixes, and then you finish prefixes. You want Darkness Enthroned at least 90% minimum. For Ghastly Jewels, there's a section in the video covering this, and I'll also put in a section in the notes. Late game, you want either Storm Shroud or Ancestral Vision for ailment immunity. For Watcher's Eye, 8% additional physical damage reduction is probably one of the best. And then clusters, there's also a section in the video as well. So unfortunately, this is not something that you can just slap on SRS and just start leveling, because Duelist is so far from all the minion nodes in the tree that you're going to have a bad time. So I would recommend leveling this as Spectral Throw into Spectral Helix at 12, and then Bone Shatter when you get to Act 6. There is skill tree progression in the PoB. If you come down here, you can scroll through and see what it looks like. RT is very important. Once you get here, you can drop Precision. And then Champion's the only one that does this usually. And they do this for recovery, because they don't have Slayer or Jugs recovery. Use Divine Shield, and this enables Arctic Armor, which gives you a lot of ES regen. If you go to the skills page, there are gem setups for many different levels. Bone Shatter Swap Act 6. And there's SRS gem setups for later. There's also notes. Make sure you check these if you play this. And gear setups for Bone Shatter, mid-game SRS, and end-game SRS. For Ghastlies, you want a Life Roll and then 2 of these 3 damage mods. Then you put a Shock Avoid in your belt, like 46% plus or so. Along with Thick Skin on the passive tree will make you shock immune. You can either craft these with Reforged Lightning or Alt-Hog Regal Spam. Both are good. Blessed Rebirth, this is required for the build. Do not play this build without this notable. Very important. Later you can get both of these. And that either takes 500 Alch Scours or 600 alts or so. Large Clusters are very, very expensive. Yeah, the bases alone run for many Divines if you want an 84 plus. But these are the best in slot mods by far. And if you can get good stuff on top of this, it's very good. And you craft these with Reforged Caster, Speed, or Alt-Aug, then Imprinting. This is like late game. Alright, so we're going to craft a Scepter here. You start with an 83 plus Stabilizing Scepter. And you want to spam Fear Essences, either T1 or T2, until you hit either +1 Lightning, +1 Fire, or +1 All. They're all good. And then you want to get it to look like this. Only these 2 mods. So whether you have to prefixes can be changed Scour or Annul, just get this. And then we're going to multi-mod. Prefixes cannot be changed. And generic flat mana prefix to fill prefixes. And then we're going to T4 Isling for a veiled suffix. Remove these with a bench. And then we're going to block any of the increased damage per charge mods. They're all the same mod pool, doesn't matter. Just block one. Then we're going to unveil. We want either minion attack speed or cast speed Arcane Surge, which is a roughly 42% chance here. So we failed. Let's pretend we did not fail here. Alright, on the second one we got cast speed. So this weapon is essentially done. Just needs to be multi-modded. So we multi-mod, then we do trigger for Desecrate Flesh Offering, and hits can't be evaded for our smite, so we don't miss. And this weapon is done. If you cast SRS while targeting the ground, the minions will distribute themselves equally among nearby targets, as you can see here. This is nothing new, it's on the wiki. And you can kind of figure this out after just playing it for a little bit. However, there's SRS behavior that's either rarely talked about or just not widely known. And that's that if you mouse over a target while casting SRS, the minions will attack only that target until their duration expires or the target dies. This is very, very useful in scenarios like Uber Elder, when you want to kill a squid ASAP, or kill Shaper at the end, or kill an Exarch Minotaur. I mean, the list goes on. It's incredibly useful. It adds a decent amount of skill expression to the build, and it's something that anyone playing SRS should be aware of. So if you want something to die, just put your mouse cursor over it and right click. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to swing by Twitch.